Welcome to Presidential Fight Club, the show that answers the question, if all 44 presidents fought each other one-on-one, who would win? Hosted by two history professors who have too much time on their hands, Scott Rank and James Early. Welcome to the second fight in the first round of the Western Regional. We're seeing a general versus Bill Clinton, Ulysses S. Grant versus William Jefferson Clinton. James, tell us what Grant brings to the fight.
Well, Grant is not a large man by any stretch of the imagination. He is about 5'9", very thin, at least when he was younger, probably about 160 or so, maybe even a little bit less. So not overwhelming in terms of his size. Growing up, he grew up working for his father in a tanning shop. In other words, his father worked with animal hides and turned them into leather. And Grant absolutely detested that work, but he did it anyway. So he's got some experience in physical labor. It's not super hard labor like a farm worker, like, for example, Abraham Lincoln had to do. But Grant knows how to use his hands. And, of course, he went to West Point. He's one of our few presidents that's a West Point grad. Didn't really like that all that much, but he's toughed it out and he made his way through. His ambition was to become a math professor. What he really wanted to do is go back, actually an assistant professor, at least at first. He wanted to teach math at West Point because he was really good at math. Another thing he was really good at was dealing with horses. He was an outstanding horse rider. In fact, I think it was Robert E. Lee or somebody. I don't know, maybe not Lee, because I don't know that Lee would have said this, but somebody said that Grant was the finest horseman that he'd ever seen. Probably not Lee, because he'd seen a lot of fine horsemen. But anyway, Grant was really good with horses, and he was really good at calming them down and breaking them. And he was kind of like a 1850s, 1860s version of the horse whisperer. Not that has any bearing on the fight, but I just thought it was interesting. Grant...
Yeah, Robert Redford in the fight.
Yeah, there's no horse involved in the fight, but if there were, he'd be handling them very well. Moving along to Grant's service, after he got out of West Point, he went almost straight into the Mexican War, and he fought very bravely there. He was a junior officer. He was a lieutenant, and he served there first under General Taylor, who is going to be fighting himself a little bit later, and then later under General Winfield Scott. And Grant served very bravely. He was repeatedly under fire, and he led groups of men on attacks. And since he was just a lieutenant, it was very small groups of men, probably a platoon or so. But so he definitely, I don't know that he did a lot of hand-to-hand combat, but he knew how to use a gun. He understood bayonet combat, and he certainly understood the idea of how to stay alive and not get hit, because he didn't ever get hit. I think I'll save the Civil War combat for later. So let's go with that. He's a very experienced, battle-hardened young man, even by the time he was, say, 25, 26 years old.
Okay, Grant, one of the greatest war hero presidents. The only one who could really compete are Eisenhower, Washington. Maybe I'm forgetting someone.
Jackson, maybe.
Right. So he's in the pantheon. Bill Clinton is not a war hero. How do I start with Bill Clinton? Okay, he's not a fighter, he's a lover. I mean that in the sense of being charismatic and connecting with voters and pounding the flesh. I mean that in the sense of premaritally. I mean that in the sense of maritally. And I definitely mean that in the sense of post-maritally or extramaritally in the lover sense. So
well, he always said that JFK was his idol. So he's trying to be like JFK in more ways than one.
In all aspects. So in the extramarital sense, he was, sadly, in the health sense also, he really matched up. Now, JFK had a lot of health issues, which we mentioned in a previous regional. Clinton isn't as sick, but he's not doing a whole lot better. Now, he is a big guy. He's 6'2", and when he was president, his weight fluctuated between 205 and 230, depending on which side of the ledger he was on of jogging versus McDonald's. And earlier on, he was much more. Now he's vegan and doesn't really look doesn't have a lot of vitality showing right now. So he is also left-handed, a southpaw. Any boxing fan will know that can give you an advantage. In terms of health problems, though, here's something that's really bad for a fight. He suffered from chronic laryngitis caused by inhalant allergies. During acute attacks, his vocal cords swelled to the point where he lost his voice. So to alleviate this, he drank lots of water, he took antihistamines and antacids, received allergy shots regularly, and slept with his head slightly elevated. He is allergic to dust, mold, pollen, cats. Don't know how they had socks as a pet, but well, whatever. And certain greenery and dairy products. So depending on where this fight is taking place, he could very well have an allergic reaction and fall over before the fight even begins. And this is a fact everyone would love to know about Bill Clinton, but in 1984, he was diagnosed with bleeding hemorrhoids. Never a good thing in a fight. How could Bill Clinton win? Well, getting back into some psychoanalysis, and this is taking place in their mid-30s, so depending on where he is experimenting with marijuana, that won't help. But Clinton, his greatest asset is his personality. And people who like him or loathe him will all agree of his incredible natural political instinct. One thing that one of his former aides or former advisors, Dick Morris, said that I don't think Bill Clinton's opinion varies much with public opinion, but within the general proposition, he wants to go north. He will take an endless variety of routes. He's constantly maneuvering, constantly picking the routes he wants to get there, maneuvering his opponents into positions where they can't get a clear shot at him. This is what leaves a legacy of Slick Willie, that he'll try to make his opponents think that he agrees with them and try to get that same type of feeling with everyone else in the room. So when he said, I feel your pain, not really good Bill Clinton, but whatever. He actually believed what he was saying, that he had this incredible level of empathy. Now, how that actually works out in a fist fight, if there's a scenario where you can somehow convince someone not to fight, Bill drapes his arm over the other guy, explains why they're actually on the same side, tells him to go get a beer, and flanks him that way, then that's how I could see you could win. But in terms of a mano-a-mano actual fist fight where you can't actually convince someone or manipulate them, I don't know if Slick Willie's really going to have a chance. So I'm not terribly enthusiastic about his odds with Grant. James, are the voters enthusiastic about Slick Willie's odds?
The voters were totally unenthusiastic about Bill Clinton's fighting ability. The Jedi mind tricks don't work on Ulysses S. Grant.
No, they
don't. So Grant wins in a landslide on this one, despite his shorter height and less weight.
Yeah, he's got size, but as we've seen repeatedly, size does not win. I forget who took out Taft earlier. Taft crushed Obama, probably literally, but
I think it was Lincoln took out Taft.
Okay, so again, there's two Lincolns and one Taft, but weight isn't always going to get you where you want. Okay, well, we have two other 20th century presidents in the next round. We're going to see Lyndon B. Johnson versus Herbert Hoover. Thanks for listening to Presidential Fight Club. If you'd like to download your own printable bracket sheets for each regional tournament so you can guess how the tournament will go, check out presidentialfightclub.com. We'd appreciate it if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts as well. Thanks for listening, and may you fight with the stamina of Teddy Roosevelt, the courage of George Washington, and the reach of Abraham Lincoln.